All right, a big round of applause for Deanna. Thank you so much, Deanna. Thank you so much. You know, I love the way that Deanna has the ability to just pull all of that together. You can talk to a lot of folks that pretend to understand how marketing works. And then once in a while, you meet somebody that obviously has a genuine understanding, both inside and out, on how this thing works. And, you know, I mean, so much of it is really the personal side and the human side. If you don't understand the psychology of your customer, you're never going to make it. You're never going to get anywhere. So really what I really was trying to say was just boom, right? Just boom. Because that's what we got. And you know, ATS University, I know it's a little different thing to some different folks, but understand that you can get the knowledge, the direction, and the actual, you know, the actual how-to, and somebody to help you walk you through some of this stuff as you go along. And you can't get that anywhere else. There are very few places that folks are actually interested in really putting the effort in to really try to help you out. And I think that that human side, again, is what makes things so much different with our family here, with Ricasa, and the you know, the Bureau of Dominant Speakers, of course, falls right into that category. But what you know, I know you could probably talk about this stuff all day too, Deanna. She just eats this stuff up and loves being able to help somebody with the information. And you know, if you just tuned in, this is the Dominate Conference 2020. Dominate. We're here for you. So let us know what we can do. If somebody invited you to this seminar, this webinar, if you're one of our regulars, whatever you are, we want to thank you for spending this time with us, and you know, hope and know that we can impart some information to you that's going to help you, whatever it is that you're doing, however you might choose to use it. So at this time, moving right along, I did want to make another introduction, and you know, returning to the stage this time is again our one and only Tempest S. Smith. If you heard me introduce Tempest earlier, she is probably one of the most important people in this company. Tempest Smith is the co-founder of the ATS Jr companies, and now serving as Chief Information Security Officer. So don't do anything wrong. She's now building a budding cybersecurity career where she hopes to educate and inspire entrepreneurs and consumers to maintain safe practices with data, systems, and information. And we are greatly blessed one more time to present Tempest S. Smith. Thank you, Tempest.
Thank you, Jerry, for that awesome introduction yet again. Before I get started, let me give out some advice to you speakers. Always check the agenda before you agree to your time slot, because had I known that Deanna was going to come and do that right before me, I would have told them that 2:35 does not work for me. And then I check for tomorrow, and I'm right after her again. So I didn't do a good job. So heed my advice, speakers. Always check to see who's going on before you and make sure that you are ready to deliver. But I'm
Great
grateful to
advice. Great advice.
I am grateful to be back with you all again. This is going to be a conversation. I know that we can't unmute, but feel free to chat with me and ask questions in the chat. Okay. I want to share a story about a man named Rob. Rob He didn't want to live his life anymore. His longtime girlfriend had just left him. The job that he had sacrificed so much for laid him off without reason. Both of his parents had died, and he felt a hopelessness that made living his life feel so unbearable. Rob wanted to commit suicide, but he wasn't able to muster up enough strength to do it just yet. So Rob went online to a discussion board that focused on free counseling, and he asked the members, "Why can't I do it? I get close so many times, but I can't just go through with it." And the number one answer was focused on the fact that he must have had some hope somewhere inside of him that was keeping him around. They suggested that he just needed to figure out what that hope was and then build on it, make it so strong that he would stop focusing on ending his life and start focusing on building a life worth living. Rob thought about that all day long, and he still couldn't figure it out. He felt even more hopeless as he cried himself to sleep that night. The next morning, he jumped up, grabbed his laptop, and went right back to that discussion board and left a message saying everyone was wrong. He didn't have any hope inside of him. One of the members replied, "Rob, you are too focused on your grief to find the hope. Before you go to bed tonight, try asking to find your hope in your dreams. In your dream life, your conscious mind, which is focused on the hopelessness, won't get in the way. You should find your answers if you just ask for them." So Rob went to sleep that night, deciding that he was going to try out that advice. He asked God to help him see where this hope was that was keeping him alive. And that same night, he had a life changing dream. In the dream, Rob was standing on a sidewalk and someone was walking towards him. This stranger was a glowing white, soothing color, and he put something inside of Rob's hands as he was passing him by. Rob looked at his hands and noticed that the stranger had given him a piece of paper with writing on it. At first, the writing was too fuzzy, but then over time, the words cleared up and he saw life is an adventure. He looked up from the paper just as the stranger started walking away, and Rob yelled, "Thank you. You just saved my life," as he felt an overwhelming sensation of love towards this complete stranger. The stranger turned around, smiled, and said, "Rob, I love you," and then disappeared into the thin air. Rob woke up with a renewed sense of hope. The dream he had was so intense and so real that he felt nothing but love vibrating through his entire body. Hopelessness that once clouded Rob's entire life had disappeared, and he suddenly realized what hope he was holding on to. He was holding on to the hope that this life was just an adventure, full of both negative and positive experiences. He realized that while there were bad experiences in his life, there could also be positive experiences in his future. and he suddenly felt more hope that that would come to be. Rob found the reason why he hadn't killed himself. He found that piece of hope that he was holding on to. And that hope gave him courage to move forward and to see what was to come. He started looking for a new job. He stopped focusing on the loss of his girlfriend. And he opened himself up to the idea of finding new love. And those parents, he looked back fondly on the moments he shared with them, knowing that they were an important part of his journey. And that hope gave him courage to continue to move forward and see what was to come. While I hope that none of us here are at the point of ending our lives, I am afraid that many of us have committed or are already on the verge of committing suicide to our hopes, our dreams, our quiet aspirations, and to our written down goals. This conference will end tomorrow. And after this conference has ended, after you no longer hear the voices from people telling you how to build your business or how to attract the life that you want or how to make sure your finances are growing, I understand how life can get in the way. I understand how you're so high and so filled with information and so ready to get started. But a small, quiet voice enters into your head and says something like, we can't do that. Or that's not for us. Or we're not good enough to execute those ideas. I've been there, done that, been there, done that, been there, done that some more. As the co-founder of this company, full of so much potential, full of so much promise, but filled with so much doubt, filled with so much low self-esteem, filled with I'm not good enough internal conversations. According to the Small Business Administration, roughly 80% of small businesses survive their first year. But only half of those businesses survive their first 5 years. We can argue about pricing or marketing or not finding the right customers. But in my opinion, the reason why so many entrepreneurs fail or get stuck in the I don't know how to do that is not because of knowledge. We have the knowledge, or at least we have access to the knowledge. We have no problem buying books or attending conferences. We sign up for the webinars. We take the courses. We sign up with ATS Business University. But when it's time to take that knowledge and start to execute, we don't move. When entrepreneurs realize that that there isn't a market need for their product, they could easily pivot. Why don't they seek out outside help for advice for next steps? Or why don't they alter their product just a little bit? Why don't entrepreneurs who are failing in their business adjust their business model to become more profitable? Why don't they find a way to solve the problem? The answer is simple. Those entrepreneurs simply stopped believing it was possible. The one thing that I've learned one thing I've learned on my journey, going from a secretary to an executive assistant to a co-founder was that every single time I leveled up, how I really felt about me rose up with me. The feelings of inadequacy, the conversations of I'm not good enough, the conversations of this isn't for me, more I'm not good enough. The feelings of I am not Antonio T. Smith Jr. and I do not have his mindset, I do not have his drive, and I certainly don't have his knowledge. With more rounds of I'm not good enough conversations. I lacked the courage to be myself. I lacked the courage to take the mask that I put on off. I lacked the courage to honor who I was and become the person I knew I could be. I lacked courage. When you look up the word courage in the dictionary, you'll find the following definitions. Courage is the mental or moral space or moral strength to venture, to persevere, and withstand danger, fear, or difficulty. Courage is the quality shown by someone who decides to do something difficult or dangerous, even though they may be afraid. Courage is the ability to do something that frightens someone. But I started looking deeper and I found that the root word of courage is core, which is a Latin word meaning heart. So, in its original meaning, courage meant to speak one's mind by telling all of one's heart. You don't have to answer this in the chat, but how many of us are too afraid, too fearful, too prideful to speak our mind by telling all of our heart to ourselves? How many of us are too afraid, too fearful, too prideful to admit to ourselves how we feel about the one person that we spend the most time with? I want to talk to you all today about how I was a co-founder battling low self-esteem and the lessons I learned along the way. Let's talk. Do you know that how we feel about ourselves dictates every single thing we do in our lives? From the way we dress to how or if we decide to use our voices, to how or if we show up in our lives, to how we manage our finances, to how we love, to how we attract the customers we take on in our business, to the shows we watch, etc., etc. Self-esteem is a way of thinking, feeling, and acting that implies that you accept, respect, trust, and believe in yourself. Self-esteem is a way of thinking, feeling, and acting that implies that you accept, respect, trust, and believe in yourself. When you accept yourself, you can live life comfortably with both your strengths and your weaknesses without falling prey to criticism. When you respect yourself, You acknowledge your own dignity and value as a unique human being. You treat yourself well in the same way you would treat someone else you respect. Self trust means that your behaviors and feelings are consistent enough to give you an inner sense of continuity and coherence despite changes and challenges in your external circumstances. When you believe in yourself, that means that you feel you deserve to have good things in your life. It also means that you have confidence, that you can fulfill your deepest personal needs, aspirations, and goals. Guess what I discovered that I was doing? I was thinking, feeling, and acting so low about myself that I was using other people as a distraction, not to work on, build on, and learn about myself. I was accepting everyone but me. I was helping everyone live comfortable with their lives. I was helping everyone build up and focus on their strengths so much that the criticism that came from themselves or from others didn't matter to them. But guess what I was doing? I was not living a comfortable life for me. I was not building myself up. And instead of focusing on strengths, I focused on the weaknesses. And focusing on the weakness caused me to spiral out of control. I was not accepting myself. If you had ever asked me what my strengths were, I fumbled my way through that answer because I didn't think I even had gifts. I thought that gifts and talents and skills were for other people, everybody else but me. I didn't respect myself. I did not value myself as a unique being, and I did not treat myself well. I taught others how to treat me by showing them that, yes, I had a mask on. Yes, I knew how to pretend, but I couldn't fake that I did not value myself. I couldn't fake that I could not, did not see my self worth. When it came to trusting myself, when it came to thinking I was going to be able to handle any situation, any life change, I failed miserably every single time. I failed because I stayed in my head playing the what if game. What if this happened? Something else is going to happen. What if things are going right now, but I'm waiting for the bottom to fall out? What if it's raining right now and it starts to flood in my life? What will I do? But believing in myself, that was the worst. When it came to believing in Tempest, I never felt that I deserved good things. But I wanted the company that I co founded to have good things. I never felt that I deserved prosperity. but I wanted the company that I co-founded to constantly operate in the overflow. I never felt that I deserved to make it, but I prayed those I prayed those faithless prayers every night, asking God to open up a window to pour out a blessing that this company could not have room to receive it. But I had to ask myself, how can and why would God bless the creation when one of the creators didn't ask for the blessing for herself? A better question, how can and why would God bless the creation with the overflow, with the prosperity, with the overflow of customers and revenue, that there won't be room enough to receive it when one of its co-founders did not believe that she was worthy enough of the blessing? Low self-esteem, lack of self-confidence, however you want to spin it, stopped me from being me. Low self-esteem, low lack of self-confidence stopped me from recognizing and operating in my gifts, which stopped me from giving my all to a company that I had sacrificed my all for. When I recognized that I had low self-esteem, I made a huge mistake. I started looking to other people and to material things to build me up. But the truth is, self-esteem must come from within. When our self-esteem is low, that creates emptiness inside of us. And many of us, like myself, try to fill those voids by latching on to any and everything outside of us that will provide a temporary sense of satisfaction and fulfillment. So here I was, co-founder of a company, and at that time we were focusing on coaching and speaking and training. And here I was, low self-esteem, didn't believe in myself, didn't value myself, had little self-worth, and I was trying to tell other people that they deserved better in their lives. Do you know what that made me? That made me a fraud. I'm speaking something to you that I refuse to apply to my own life. But don't just look at Tempest. I watch some of y'all. I see your posts, and then I see how you don't match up to the things that you post about. Take it from me. Being a fraud does not help you sleep good at night. I tossed and turned and rattled so long, so hard, because I was being every single thing that I was not meant to be. I have a podcast called Overcoming Low Self-Esteem. And I cannot tell you how many times I get messages and emails from people who I don't know, who feel the need to tell me that they don't have low self-esteem. The funny thing is, in order to get my contact information off the podcast, you have to listen to an entire episode because I don't give out that information until the very end. So you mean to tell me you research found a podcast called Overcoming Low Self-Esteem, listen to a 15, 20, 30-minute episode, got my contact information, send me a message, only to tell me, who you don't know and I don't know you, how you don't have low self esteem. I never asked anyone to share that information, but I promise you that they do. They get in my inbox, they get in my email, and they brag to me about how confident they are, about how great their looks are, about how wonderful their personalities are, about how much they love their life and how much they love their significant others and how great their kids are, and so on and so on. But they make a mistake and they keep talking. And the real them finally shows up in the message. And they go from everything's perfect in my life to I want to do X, Y, and Z, but I don't feel like I'm good enough for that yet. And the real them shows up. They tell me how much work they have to do after bragging about how great they are. Can I share something with you? Some of the people that scream and yell and talk the loudest are using their volume to masquerade their pain. Some of the people that scream and yell and talk the loudest are suffering the most. Confidence, true confidence, does not mean I have to speak the loudest. Confidence, true self confidence, is that I believe in myself the most. And I don't know where we've gotten this from, and I wish we would send it back. But just because I believe in myself does not equal I need to be the loudest person in the room. Do you know, in my experience, I'm not talking about anybody, but in my experience, the people who talk the loudest just want attention because they can't handle life being quiet, because they feel so low about who they really are. They need a constant spotlight on them. A lot of the times, and I love you dearly, a lot of the times you're loud and you're extra because the pain inside of you is too loud. It's too overwhelming. And instead of being the woman or man that you claim that you are, you use your volume instead of doing the inner work. As a CEO, as a co-founder, as an entrepreneur, or whatever the title is that makes you feel good, you cannot, and I mean this sincerely, you will not be effective in your business masquerading your pain. You will not be an effective life coach, business coach, consultant, speaker, trainer, whatever it is that you're trying to do. You will not be effective if you are masquerading your pain and trying to cover it up with everything and everybody that you encounter. Eventually, that pain is going to rise to the surface. Ask me how I know. Eventually, that suffering is going to rise up to the top, and you won't be able to stop you and your pain and your suffering from spilling out into your customers, from spilling out into your products, from spilling out into your customer service. Let's go back to self-worth. Unconditional human worth means that you are important and valuable as a person because your essential core self is unique and precious, of infinite, eternal, unchanging value. Unconditional human worth means that you are important, you are valuable as a person because your essential core self is unique and precious, of infinite, eternal, unchanging value. Unconditional human worth implies that you are as precious as any other person. Notice I did not say unconditional worth implies that you are as precious as any other person as long as you have, or if you do X, Y, and Z. Unconditional human worth means that you are important and you are valuable as a person because your essential core self is unique and precious, of infinite, eternal, unchanging value. I researched and found that there are 5 laws of human worth. Number 1, all have infinite, eternal, and unconditional worth as people. Number 2, and please catch this if you don't hear nothing else I say today, all have equal worth as people. Worth is not comparative, nor is it competitive. Although you may be better at sports, academics, or business, and I might be better with social skills, we both have equal worth as human beings. Number 3, externals neither add to nor diminish our self-worth. Externals include things like money, looks, performance, and achievements. These things only increase our market or our social worth, but our worth as a person is infinite and unchanging. Number 4, worth is stable and is never in jeopardy. Even if someone rejects you, even if your products don't sell the way that you think that they should be selling, even if your family and friends don't support you or won't share your social media posts, or they don't sign up for your success team, or if someone else gets praised and recognized and you don't. I want to move on, but I feel like I need to say something right there. Every time someone else, if every time when someone else gets praised, gets recognized, and they don't call your name as well, and you have an attitude about that, you get upset about that, you have to get on social media and post about that, You, my dear, have low self-esteem. If it bothers you to the point that your mood alters because someone else on the same team gets praised, gets acknowledged, gets recognized, you have a problem. Number 5, worth does not have to be earned or proved. It already exists. Learn to recognize that, learn to accept that, and learn to appreciate that. An author is quoted by saying, when our value as human beings depend on what we make with our hands and minds, we become the victim. We become victims of the fear tactics of our world. If productivity is our main way of overcoming self-doubt, we are extremely vulnerable to rejection and criticism and prone to inner anxiety and depression. In other words, if you believe that your value only exists as long as you are making something or creating something or doing something, you will stay stuck in a cycle of praise when things are going right and depression when you have nothing to show for it. Your business, your next product, your next coaching program, your next keynote, your next client, your next paid invoice does not increase or decrease your human worth. I struggled with that because I felt as long as I was doing, my self-worth was rising. And the moment I stopped doing, the moment I stopped performing, I felt like my worth diminished. And some of you are the same way. As long as you're posting, as long as you're showing up to class, as long as you're getting the clients and the money is flowing in, you think you're doing good. But the moment you hit a dry season, the moment that someone can't pay their invoice, the moment that the speaking engagements stop, the moment that someone says, I can't afford you this month, you think your worth has gone down. It's okay to recognize that you alone are enough, that you are not defined by your business, that you are not defined by the books you write or the speeches you give or the products you serve. If your identity is tied into anything other than you need to check yourself. So, lessons that I've learned along the way. First lesson, these are not in any particular order. First lesson, I learned that I need to have the courage to discover who I truly was and then do that every single day. A few years ago, thanks to YouTube, I found Abraham Hicks. And for those of you who do not know Abraham, I would describe Abraham Hicks as a higher collective of consciousness that speaks through a woman named Esther. And every morning I signed up for Abraham's email list. And every morning I receive a daily quote from Abraham. And I normally share with our staff group each morning. And one message a couple of months ago stayed with me, and I'm going to read it to you now. Before I do, if you don't understand everything, that's okay. I promise to point out the reason for me reading this. So the message says, the beasts that came before you, those who banged around on this planet, detonated at cellular, conscious, and unconscious levels. And that is how the atmosphere was prepared for you. They did not write one thing on their things to do list. They just existed and perceived and concluded and asked vibrationally. And the universe expanded as a result of their willingness to have exposure to the contrast. And you are no different than them. You have no greater responsibility than they did. The contrast produces the desire within you, and the universe expands as a result of it. The only question is the question that we want you so much to answer is, are you letting it in? Are you letting yourself experience the benefit of your precious focus and your vast experience in the here and in the now? You will never get it all done, and you cannot get it wrong. So don't you think it's time for you to lighten up and start having more fun with all of this and accept that you are eternal beings? And since you are eternal beings, there is no point in rushing, because there's never going to be a time when which you did not exist. 3 words I want to focus on. They just existed. Can I ask, when was the last time you allowed yourself to just be? A better question, when was the last time you allowed yourself to be yourself? A better question, when have you ever in your existence gave yourself permission to be exactly who you are? When was the last time you gave yourself permission to be who you are, to love who you are, to honor and respect who you are? When was the last time you gave yourself permission to feel worthy as you are, and to know that you are enough as you are? I am so afraid, like myself, that many of us are floating through this life, living up to someone else's expectations, trying our hardest to carry out someone else's life missions. And many of us are trying to be everything that we were never meant to be. Many of us don't know who we are because we have listened to everyone else tell us who we are. Many of us don't know our worth because we have allowed everybody else to define worth and to define our worth for us. And instead of taking that power back, we allow their definition to be our life's mission. And we accepted that. And we honored that. And we operated as someone else's ceiling when their ceiling is meant to be our floor. Some of us are walking through this life, putting on a mask, pretending that we are enjoying our lives when our parents, when our circumstances, when our friends, when our environment has been defined for us. When was the last time you gave yourself permission to be who you are. And I know many of you are saying, well, I know exactly who I am, and I live my life exactly as I am. And that may be. But do you struggle to look in the mirror at yourself? Do you struggle when someone asks, how are you doing today? You have to go through a process before you can answer how you're doing today. Oh, and this is the answer that I despise the most, but whatever. How you doing today? Oh, I'm blessed and highly favored. Really? Because being blessed is not a response to how you're doing today. How are you feeling today? Because I love God and I know that He blesses me daily, but I don't always feel blessed. Sometimes I want to tell people I am close to falling apart. Sometimes when people ask me, how am I doing? I want to tell them, I really don't want to be bothered today. I'm in a mood. When some Law said he is chocolate and highly favored. Okay. And you know what? Law may be the one person who can say that. When people ask us how we're doing, we go through a process in our head instead of giving people the real answer. When we get dressed in the morning, are we picking out clothes in our closet that makes us feel good, look good? Or are we picking out clothes in our closet that someone else said, this is what you should wear? Are we at jobs or starting businesses that make us happy? Or are we at jobs or starting businesses because someone else said this is what you should be doing? For the last, well, not few months, this entire year, we've been in a pandemic. And month after month, day after day, we've heard people say you should wear a mask or don't wear a mask. And I'm not here to argue that. But I find it ironic that people have been complaining about wearing a mask, but most of us wear a mask in our lives daily. Not a physical mask, but a mask that doesn't allow us to be our true selves. A mask that allows our thoughts or controls our thoughts by telling us, I'm not good enough for that, or I'm not smart enough for that. We mask our greatness by downplaying what we know, what we're capable of, and what we're ready to experience. How do I know? I put on a mask for years. I downplayed my greatness my whole life. How do I know about the mask? Because for so long, I convinced myself that I wasn't good enough for anything, that I wasn't smart enough to achieve, that people like me from environments like I grew up don't get to make it out of the hood, that we don't get to start businesses, that we don't get to start businesses that are successful. I've worn a mask as a secretary, as an assistant, and I for sure wore a mask as a co founder. The difference between me and the rest of the co founders that are wearing a mask is that I am bold enough to admit it out loud. And I'm in the process of healing myself. Can you say the same about you? I had to find the courage to let go of the thought of disappointing others, including their thoughts about me and their opinions about me. So once again, I ask, are you living your life, or are you living the life that someone else prepared for you? Are you building your dreams, or have you picked up dreams that someone you love dearly laid down? Do you have the business that you want? Do you have the business that you are willing to die for, that you are excited about? Or did someone tell you what they thought would be a good look for you because you didn't know what you want to do? You didn't know what you wanted to do with your life. Or you've been walking around this earth saying you don't know what your purpose is. And because you have that mentality, any and everything looks good to you. You're going to have to learn to disappoint some people. You're going to have your own thoughts. And those thoughts will absolutely collide with people who believe that they know what's best for you. When we choose to be true to ourselves, the people around us will struggle to make sense of how and why we are changing. Our significant others and our children may start to feel scared and unsure about the changes that they are seeing. And our family and friends will worry about how our new practices will affect them and our relationship with us. Some will find inspiration from our new commitment, while others, the loud ones, will tell you that you are changing too much and feel like you are abandoning them. Or for some reason, you changing makes them feel insignificant in their own lives. The truth is, it's not the fact that you are changing and becoming more authentic to yourself. The problem that people have with you changing is that you have the audacity to change. People are creatures of habit and they don't like change. So when something around them starts changing, starts looking different, that makes them nervous about them. But if you are changing for other people, if you are changing to prove a point to other people, your change will not be effective. Ask me how I know. I thought if I changed for other people, that will make them like me even more. But whether I changed for them or if I changed for myself, they still had a problem. They still talked about me. They still ran to Antonio and told him how he needed to get rid of me. All because, not because I was changing, but because they were afraid to change themselves. Next lesson. I had to have the courage to release everything that did not serve me. There's a story of two monks, one an older gentleman and one a younger one. And these two monks were traveling together. At one point, they came to a river with a strong current, and the only way to continue on their journey was to cross this river. As they were preparing to cross the river, they noticed a very young and very beautiful woman attempting to cross. The young woman asked, "Could you please help me get to the other side?" The two monks glanced at each other, and without saying, the two monks glanced at each other because they had taken vows not to touch a woman ever again. Then, without a word, the older monk picked up the woman, threw her across his shoulders, and carried her across the river. Once he got to the other side, he gently placed her down and continued on his journey. The younger monk could not believe what just happened. After he after he crossed the river and joined his friend, he was speechless. A whole hour passed by and no one said a word. 2 more hours passed by. 3 more hours passed by. And finally, this young monk couldn't take it anymore. He stopped walking, looked at the older monk, and said, "As monks, we are not allowed to touch another woman. How dare you pick that woman up, put her on your shoulders when we have vowed to do otherwise?" The older monk looked at his friend and said, "Friend, I sat that woman down hours ago. Why are you still holding on to that?" I'm a researcher and I observe people very well. And I have discovered that so many of us prefer to turn around and worry about what's behind us rather than move forward and build for our future. I find that many of us go through our lives forming attachments to things, to people, to places, to thoughts, to emotions, to behaviors and events that our lives become so overburdened with things that really don't matter. We worry about things that have stopped adding value to our lives, that stop giving us pleasure. Or we're like the monk in the story. We travel on our journey. We pretend that we are living and thriving in our lives, but we are so consumed with the past that we miss the blessings that are all around us. And that happens to us each and every day. We outgrow these same people, these same places, these same things, these same thoughts, emotions, behaviors. But we refuse to release ourselves from the baggage. We purposely cripple ourselves. We purposely lower our vibrations. We purposely suffer because we would rather hold on to what doesn't serve us than have the freedom to let go. To suffer means we purposely feel and endure pain. Some of us, as I said earlier, some of us suffer because we think that makes us worthy and makes us honorable human beings. But to suffer because you won't release things that don't serve you, to suffer because you won't learn to move on, keeps us from reaching our greatest potential. It blocks us from serving our supreme destiny and our highest expression of self. Suffering doesn't serve you anymore. As a co founder, I had to learn that if I kept holding on to the past, if I kept focusing on the things from my past, I was an ineffective leader. That if I focused on not forgiving, if I focused on my father not being in my life or the relationship that turned abusive, I would not be able to serve the people I was called to serve. Some of us or holding on to ideas, and God help us, people that no longer serve us, but we're wondering why the universe won't bless us with the things that we keep praying for. We think we're doing everything right. We're posting the right posts. We just listened to Deanna and we took notes and we're adjusting our marketing plan. But for some reason, people won't pay attention to us. Could it be that the things that you are holding on to, the baggage from your past, is blocking you from picking up the blessings in your present and in your future? Start to learn what doesn't serve you anymore. We're in a new month. This is a holiday season, and God help us, we're about to approach a new year. I hope and pray that none of us carry the emotional baggage from 2020 into 2021. Because I thought 2019 was the roughest year of my life, and 2020 said, surprise, I got something else for you. And some of us are suffering in 2020, not just because of the pandemic and the effects of it, but some of us are suffering in 2020 because we carried baggage from 2019 into 2020. But not just 2019, we carry baggage from 2018 into 2019, which is now in 2020. We carry baggage from 2016, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 09, 08, 07, 06, 05, 04, 03, 02, 01 into 2020, and we wonder why we're so tired. We wonder why we can't seem to get enough rest. Can I share with you that it's time to cut the baggage? Yes, people hurt you in 2000 and 1987, as somebody just put in chat, in 1960, and I get it, and I'm sorry, and I know that it hurts. But aren't you tired of repeating the same lessons? Aren't you tired of carrying the same weight around with you when all you have to do is release the baggage? I don't know about you, but I don't want to carry with me pain from my past for another day. Because while I had expectations that things should have went another way, today I can't do anything about the past. Today I can't change what happened to me. And the anger that I carried did not change the fact that my father refused to be in my life, or did not change the fact that I was in an abusive relationship, or did not change the fact that I took that anger out on other people. I had to learn to release the things that wasn't serving me. Next lesson, I don't know what lesson I'm on. Next lesson, I had to have the courage to forgive. There's a story. There once was a man who had a horse, and this horse gave birth to a pony. The man did not have enough space for both horse and pony, so he sold the pony off. The new owner of the pony owned a traveling circus, and this pony had been reduced to walking in circles day in, day out, week after week, month after month, year after year. This pony was only allowed to walk in circles in the direction that his handlers guided him. After that pony became old and tired, this now horse was taken to his new home. This home was a beautiful, lush, and spacious pasture out in the country, providing so much space to explore and to discover. Yet, Even in this newfound place of freedom, this horse could not seem to escape his old pattern of life. He continued walking in circles, round and round, day in and day out, obviously not knowing any other way to operate. It may seem strange that this horse, gifted with nothing but space and freedom, chose to continue to pace back and forth in circles. But that horse and those circles, they represent us and our lack of forgiveness that we choose to operate in. Those circles that horse walks around in demonstrates how a cycle of unforgiveness defines us, restrains us, controls us, and over time, it becomes our legacy. It becomes our pattern of forgiving, and it becomes the first thing that people notice about us. Although we are surrounded by space and opportunity to forgive, space and opportunity to let go and to move on, we choose the circles. We choose the cycles. We choose to purposely not forgive and recycle through the pain, relying on memories to give us excuses not to forgive. Guess what will not work in business? Or guess what won't work as a CEO? Holding on to grudges and holding on to resentment. Being angry that you're not getting your due respect or enough appreciation or enough affection or enough help or the apology or the consideration or the reward that you think you deserve won't really work in your business. Did you know that being a CEO, a professional speaker, means that you're going to have to learn to let things go and let things go quickly? I apologize in advance, but to you life coaches and to you motivational speakers, how can you claim to want to help change someone's life, but you refuse to forgive in your own personal life? How can you proclaim to be a change agent, but you won't change yourself? How can you get on social media, get on a stage, and tell people how to better their lives when you obviously have the resources, you obviously have the tools, you obviously have the 1, 2, 3 plan, but you refuse to do it in your own life? Do you know how many times someone invited Antonio out to speak and we barely had the gas money to get there? And when we got there and after he delivered, they walked up to him and told him, "I'm sorry, but we can't afford to pay you right now." Do you know how many times Antonio coached people, and when it came time to pay that invoice, they got quiet, they ghosted, they stopped answering their phone, they didn't get their emails, but they got the help that they needed to change their lives? Had we stayed stuck in that space of being angry because someone refused to hold up the end of their bargain, had we stayed in that place, would you even be here today? Would you follow leaders that do not know how to release or how to forgive? Yet you want people to follow you, and you want people to buy your products and use your services, but you aren't the leader that you are looking for in your life. How many people, how many clients, how many customers, how many potential clients, how many supporters, how many donors, how many volunteers, future employees, future contracts will you miss out on because you purposely are holding on to grudges, purposely holding on to unforgiveness in your personal life? And for some reason, once again, you think what happens in your personal life won't float over to your business. Can I tell you that a seed is a seed and a harvest is a harvest? And the seed and the harvest do not separate personal from professional. Every single time I planted a seed of unforgiveness or jealousy, or you get on my nerves, or anger in my personal life, it blossomed in this company. If you don't get your life in order, how dare you get mad that people are passing your business by? If you don't get your personal life together, how can you get angry when you're posting on social media and people scroll right past you? It's not that your posts aren't great or your ads aren't effective. It's the energy that's coming off of you. If you don't learn to forgive, if you don't learn to release the anger and the pain that you are holding on to in your personal life, to that, from that significant other to that parent to whatever it is, it will, and I promise you, it will show up in your business with a vengeance. It will show up in your business in great abundance. If you don't learn to forgive, I promise you, your business will suffer. Forgiveness is a process freely chosen by you in which you willingly reduce resentment through hard work and offer goodness of some kind toward the person who harmed you. Forgiveness is a process, meaning it may not come easily and it may not come quickly. Freely chosen by you, meaning you get to decide whether or not you forgive or not. But ask yourself, can you handle the fallout from your lack of forgiveness? And the next time you make a mistake and you want someone to forgive you, they also have a choice. And if you're not forgiving, why do you expect other people to forgive you? Next lesson, I had to have the courage to release my fears and get out of my comfort zone. Apparently, today is a day of stories, so I have another story. Once there was a king who received a gift of two beautiful falcons. These falcons were the most beautiful birds he had ever seen. And he gave these birds to his head trainer to be trained. Months passed, and one day The trainer informed the king that although one of the falcons were flying, soaring high into the sky, the other falcon had not moved from its branch since the day it arrived. The king summoned all the healers in the land to tend to this falcon, but no one could make this bird fly. He then presented the task to his court, but the next day the king saw through the palace window that the bird had still not moved from that branch. Having tried everything else, the king thought to himself, maybe I need to find someone familiar with the countryside to understand the nature of this problem. So he cried out to his court, go and find a farmer. The next morning, the king was thrilled to see the falcon soaring high above the palace gardens. He said to his court, bring me the doer of this great miracle. The court quickly located the farmer, who came and stood before the king. And the king asked him, how did you make this falcon fly? We've tried everything, and for months he refused. The farmer bowed his head and said, it was easy, Your Highness. I simply cut the branch where the bird was sitting. How many of us are exactly like this bird, equipped with everything we need to succeed, everything we need to enter into a better life, everything we need to thrive, but choosing to remain comfortable instead of flying the way we were meant to fly? How many people does it take to gather around you to get you to do the simple things, all because you've gotten comfortable? Instead of taking risk and doing something different to get different results, we continue doing the same thing, not because of lack of knowledge, but because we're comfortable. According to Bob Proctor, our comfort zone is a place we reach once we stop reaching, stretching, seeking, and risking. Without continued growth, where we are now is where we will always be. You are in your comfort zone every single time you settle rather than going after what's rightfully yours. Imagine a toddler got comfortable with just crawling around and never took any initiative to stand up or to try to take a step. We would think we would need to get our baby checked out, right? But we never check ourselves when we refuse to take initiative to change our lives or to change our situations. We never check ourselves when we recognize that we are in the exact same place, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, that we were 10 years ago or 15 years ago. We never check to see if we're still alive when we stop growing, because we have confused being comfortable with living and thriving. What does this look like? It looks like knowing you have a profitable idea for a business, but instead of working for the business, you settle going to work 9 to 5 to a job that doesn't serve you, to a job that doesn't value you, to a job that doesn't pay you. And instead of cutting the branch or working towards cutting the branch, we remain. We become familiar because, at least at this job, I know what to expect. If you stay comfortable long enough, you may find yourself stuck here and everyone else is in 2030. If you remain comfortable, you will take the classes but never execute because you think being successful is showing up to classes. As a co founder and as a CEO, you must learn to get out of your comfort zone because the world changes every single day. And if you refuse to keep up with the world, you and your business will be left behind. Next lesson, I had to have the courage to make mistakes. During an interview with Stanford Graduate School of Business, Oprah Winfrey said the following, and I'm paraphrasing: there are no mistakes. Sometimes we get off track and land in the wrong marriage or in the wrong business, but everything eventually leads us back to where we're supposed to be. So I know I'm about to contradict myself when I say I had to have the courage to make mistakes. But what I'm really saying is I had to have the courage to walk into places that I was not familiar with and allow myself to make mistakes and get off track so I can go learn the lessons to not repeat the same mistakes over again. I watched that video years ago and felt like she was lying because in my mind, everything that I had ever touched was a failure. Everything in my mind, everything that I had touched was a mistake. But the truth is, there are no mistakes. But how would I have learned that if I never took risk? Is your business not growing because you refuse to take a risk because you're afraid of the mistakes or you are afraid of looking silly? Once again, you cannot and you will not succeed in business or in life if you don't make mistakes. Lastly, and then I'm opening up for questions, I had to have the courage to get off the sidelines and to get in the game. What if you are the LeBron James or the next Oprah Winfrey or the next Beyonce or the next Barack Obama in your field? And instead of getting on the court and stepping into your greatness, you shrink. What would happen if Barack Obama said, "No one like me has ever been president, so I refuse to do so"? What if Oprah Winfrey decided that she was not going to start the Oprah Winfrey Show or now the OWN Network? She would have missed out on being one of the richest women in the world. What if LeBron James decided to shrink back in high school or back in his first year or 2 years in the NBA and not show up and step into the greatness? Would you know his name? You, my friends, if you're hearing the sound of my voice, you have a responsibility and you have the duty to step into your greatness. You have the responsibility to get off the sidelines and to get into the game. It is no longer enough to attend the classes, get off the training, and do absolutely nothing. Your customers, your potential customers are waiting for you. Someone needs to hear your voice. Someone needs to read and hear your story. And someone is waiting for you to change their lives. But because you refuse, because I used to refuse, I wonder how many people we missed because I didn't get off the sidelines and get into the game. So I close with this. One day, a professor walked into his classroom and asked his students to prepare for a surprise test. They waited anxiously at their desks for their test to begin. The professor handed out a single sheet of paper with a single sheet of paper face down on their desks as usual. Once he handed them all out, he asked his students to turn the page and to begin. To everyone's surprise, there were no questions, just a black dot at the center of each page. The professor, seeing the expression on everyone's face, told them the following: I want you to write what you see on the paper. The students were confused and looked at each other and quickly finished the task. At the end of the class, the professor took all of the papers and started reading each one out loud in front of all the students. All of them, with no exceptions, described the black dot, trying to explain its position in the middle of the sheet. After all had been read, the classroom was silent. The professor began to explain, I'm not going to grade you on this. I just wanted to give you something to think about. No one wrote about the white part of the paper. Everyone focused on the black dot, and the same happens in our lives. We have a white paper to observe and to enjoy, but we rather focus on the dark spots. Our life is a gift given to us with love and care, and we always have reasons to celebrate. Nature renews itself every day. We have friends who surround us and a job that provides us with our livelihood. However, we insist on focusing only on the dark spots, the health issues that bother us, the lack of money, the complicated relationships with our family, the disappointment in friends, etc. The dark spots are very small compared to everything we have in our lives, but they are the ones that pollute our minds the most. Take your eyes away from the black spots in your life and enjoy each one of your blessings by focusing on the white page in your life. Learn to be happy and live a life positively. I close by saying this. It's easy for me to reflect on the last 9 years and see all of the bad things. It's easy for me to focus on splitting Doritos, splitting Arizona teas. It's easy for me to focus on how many people used and abused us. It's really easy to focus on how many products we launched and no one bit. It's easy to focus on how many people told us that they will always be there. But the moment we hit a small bump in the road, they disappeared. It's easy to think about how much we studied social media, how much we studied using a camera, how much we studied to use the right lighting, only for us to produce, only for us to post, and absolutely no one watched. It's easy to focus on the podcast that we started and not knowing that one person was listening. It's easy to focus on the podcast we started and having to physically take people's phones and subscribing to our podcast for them because they refuse to do it on their own. It's easy to focus on the friends and the family who refuse to support us. It's easy to focus on how much money we lost. It's easy to focus on the ex employees who were with us in the trenches but had secretive motives. And once those motives came to light, they couldn't handle the responsibility of being on the other side of them. It's easy to focus on the people who come and sit and learn and love us one day and hate us the next day. That's the easy part. The hard part was adjusting to see that although people left us, we have more people than we've ever had before. That although we failed and fumbled and went hungry and went in the dark and went without, today we went through that so we never have to go through that again. It's easy to focus on everything that went wrong with everything ATS prior to 2020, but it's easy to focus and celebrate and be grateful and be mindful that all those seeds that were planted are harvesting today. It's easy to trap yourself into low self esteem because your business, your product, your idea is not what you envisioned it. It's not making the money that you once thought, or it's taking longer to produce than what you're comfortable with. But once you get through that, once you get through the pain, once you get through all of the hardship, I promise you, life is better. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you all so much for. I shared this with Antonio through a text, but it's amazing to start a company where no one showed up and to host a 2-day conference, and you all have been here since 8 a.m. Central Standard Time. Thanks for rocking with us. Thank you for showing us that the struggle and the pain was worth it. And I hope that something I said blesses you and helps you avoid the mistakes I made. Hi, Jerry.
Well, well. My. You certainly did show up today, Miss Tempest.
Thank you.
That quiet introvert that I thought I had been seeing, you left at home today, obviously.
I am at home.
Did you lock her in the closet? Wait,
Thank you.
a couple of questions, if
Sure.
you've got the energy.
Of
I
course.
No, I think this is one of the most important things that we can talk about. I really do. Self-esteem and how we deal with it is probably the most permeating issue in our society. I really think so. So it's so cool that you can spend that kind of time delving into, and obviously you came with the personal insights, and I just want to thank you for sharing. And I know that does take some courage to come to the table with, for sure. One question that came over: when did you realize, do you think, that it was time to get what you deserved?
Ooh. Wow, great question. I hmm At one point, um, I guess I just woke up one day and realized you keep helping other people. Why don't you help yourself? And it came honestly at a point out of anger where I was so tired of giving my all to other people and seemingly not getting anything in return, to where I asked myself, why do you why do you go harder for other people and refuse to show up for yourself? It was a lot of internal conversations, but it came back to, why do you do this for other people but shrink when it comes to you? And I didn't think that I would be effective as anything, as a co-founder, as a CEO, as a leader, as a coach, as a speaker, if I wasn't applying the things that I was giving out to other people.
That makes perfect sense. Well, you know, there were a couple of times in what you were talking about that, I mean, it just, to me, it just felt like you were talking directly to my spirit. And I could tell by looking at some of the comments that I wasn't the only one. You know, when you talked about early on, you said honesty, and you talked about how you lacked the courage. Man, how many times have any of us felt that way? You know, that we've just lacked the courage, and you feel like you know what the issue is, but you have to have that energy, and you got to put it in that place to be able to make that happen. How can you tell the difference between self-confidence? Because, you know, I mean, we can work our jobs and do our thing and be at that level, and yet still suffer from low self-esteem, and what that does to us. How can you tell the difference between self-confidence and self-esteem?
I think it's really hard, because ask me to do a task and I'm confident that I can knock it out the park. Ask me to research something. Okay, no problem. Ask me to go on YouTube and learn how to do something. give me an hour or two. I'm confident that I can execute, or I'm confident that I can learn something and become better. I think the difference is that we tie our self into what we can do, right? I know I excel at X, Y, and Z, so I make my identity that. But once I'm not performing, or once I'm not executing, or once I'm not doing whatever it is, then I just have to deal with me, right? I can't do everything all day, every day. At some point, my body needs to shut down. And I say, like, your self-esteem pops up the most when, or at least for me, when it's time to go to bed, when I'm relaxed and it's quiet and I have nothing but me and my thoughts, and my thoughts start creeping in. That to me is the difference. So sure, as long as I was executing, um, no problem. I'm on the job and I can do the job real quick, no problem. I'm great at that. But when it came to me personally, how I felt about me and not my abilities, I think that is the big difference.
No, I feel exactly the same way. And, you know, I mean, self-esteem affects different people in different ways,
Mm-hmm.
obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but it can affect so many different areas of our life. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It can stop us from eating healthy. It can stop us from working out. It can stop us from, I don't know, traveling or doing things that, like, our heart knows it wants us to do, but we're afraid to take a step. So I talk about how you feel, but it shows up everywhere. It shows up to how you treat yourself, to, can I say, how you do your personal hygiene. Like, do you even feel worthy enough for that? So it shows up all the time. We just have to pay attention to where and how it shows up.
You know, I think the hardest part for me has always been the old catch 22 of when you focus on something that you get what you focus on, right? So if you're
Right.
not careful and you focus on your low self-esteem in the wrong way,
You get
you're
more.
going to end up with more of it, right?
Yeah.
How's that figure?
So I say, like, focus on it to where you acknowledge it. And once I see, okay, I have low self esteem or I have issues in this area, then I can work towards the positive for it. So for me, it was, I didn't think I deserved things, or I thought that life had to be, a struggle or whatever. Once I acknowledged it and accepted it, then I was able to work towards being better. But when I thought only about how I felt unworthy, of course I got more situations where I felt unworthy, which made me say, hey, I don't deserve good things because this thing keeps happening to me. So when I focus on putting it in the positive spin, that's when things change. So thank you for pointing it out, because I don't think I said that. But yes, identify your low self-esteem, or yes, identify it, but that doesn't mean stay there. That means work towards getting better.
Awesome. Awesome. Great answer. Well, I think the only other thing that I wanted to bring up, and something that seems to really affect how well you can deal with it. You really focused in on carrying that emotional baggage,
Mm.
what that does to you, and what it does, with your comfort zone, and do you think, does everyone, I mean, I've read some studies that say that, it's very high percentages, but does everyone deal with this? Is it everybody? I mean, I've seen even studies on CEOs of major companies. And of course, you're telling us your story here today. Does everyone deal with this?
I think everyone does. I just don't think everyone wants to admit it.
Yeah.
I think there are, this is just me, but I think that there's areas for everybody where we're not as high in confidence or high in esteem as we would like to be. But I think that we're afraid to admit that out loud because we think that makes us look weak, or makes us not be a leader, or whatever it is. And for some people, that may be true. But in my experience, I gravitate towards people who are open to being vulnerable, right? So I follow Brene Brown a lot, and she's a researcher of shame, guilt, and vulnerability. And the more she talked about being vulnerable, and um, how employees respond to leaders who are vulnerable and admitting their mistakes, their productivity went up because they trust, the employees trust that leader more. So I think that, to answer your question, I think yes, everyone does in some area, just everyone isn't willing or ready to admit that out loud.
Right. Right. Well, that makes sense. Well, this is a subject, like I said, we could probably go on all day with, and I think it's an important one. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. I enjoyed your questions. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Let's open up again, if we could, and spread some joy and blessing on our friend Tempest Smith. Thank you, Tempest. Awesome. Awesome. Well,